All right, welcome everybody back to the Fitz and Franson Show. Today we are going to be touching on a topic that seems to come up pretty regularly in organizations that recognize the opportunity to grow. And so major organizational changes can often look like overhauling processes, reshaping sales culture. And in that process, we have to acknowledge that sometimes we may lose team members before we start rebuilding. So a lot of these businesses typically start with the idea that I can install a floor, or I can paint a room, or I can do a one-day bath, or whatever the industry you're in. And then you realize that friends and family ran out, and now you have to go figure out how to market. And then you figure out that you can make the phone ring, but when you get to the customer's house, you have no idea how to sell them. And a lot of this stuff then turns into, once those systems are built, it then turns into getting the right people on the team. In that entrepreneurial space, the analogy is the bus. Get everybody on the bus, but then get them in the right seats. Who's the driver and who's in the other spots? So scaling demands can disrupt that flow. And so Matt just finished up a 2-day training up in Rhode Island, and this came up there as well. And so we just wanted to touch on some of the layers to this and unpack it for you guys, our listeners. So, yeah.
I'm both gassed from training and amped up at the same time. It's they were a good group to be part of up here, but it was a cool reminder, right? That there are different stages that everybody goes through, and there are different plateaus that you have to be willing to bust through and make decisions as to whether or not you're going to change and evolve, right? And that change and that evolution that you're going to go through is painful for the players that are part of your team. And some people are going to survive that, some people aren't. And the way we manage that as leaders is really, really critical. So it's a really good topic. It was fun to see maybe a group up here that's a little further in their journey than others. And I've been a part of it on a lot of different scales. So it's a fun reminder of where those things can be at.
Yeah. And one of the things that Fitz and I love to do is join the conversations that these businesses are having around what it looks like to grow. So kind of the first topic to discuss, Fitz, is, why do major changes happen with organizations? What are some of the things you've seen in personal experience and then with helping others on why these big changes need to happen?
Yeah, well, it starts at the top. It starts with a decision. And the decision is, are we going to take a step forward, or are we comfortable just staying where we are? And the reality of it is the decision to stay where you are is kind of the decision to slow down and stop and actually go backwards. One of the things that you start to realize is, if you're comfortable being a, $2 million business, the unfortunate reality is if you stay continuing to do the same revenue, your costs and expenses don't stop at that level either, though, right? People want to get paid a little bit more, and they deserve to because they're doing good work for you. So they expect their wages to go up with the cost of living and the things that happen to us naturally year after year. Your manufacturers continue to have to charge more because the cost of materials and goods go up as well too. But if you're only producing that volume on the other end at that same level, the gap of margin continually closes year after year. So the decision to stay still is in and of itself a death sentence, so to speak, right? So by the time you realize it might be too late. So once you make that decision, like I said, it's a decision at the top that says, hey, all right, I want more, I need to do more, and I want to grow. So you have to make that decision that says, I'm going to do it. And, you reach out to peers and others that have done it and gone through it, and you find out what made them successful in doing it. And don't reinvent the wheel, right? There are things out there that have worked for others, and it will work for you as well, too. The challenge in it is that your people have probably gotten comfortable doing it the way that you're doing it. And when you introduce a new variable, inevitably that's going to rock the boat, so to speak. So you have to be prepared for what that change management looks like. So Look, I'll share a personal story with you and the rest of the listeners and viewers here that, my previous role that I was in, I was brought in to an organization that had been doing things, by all accounts, very successfully for a very long time, family-owned organization. And the owner made a decision that they wanted to grow. Their peers around them were growing, and they wanted a part of that. And in order to do so, he realized he needed to grow the sales portion of his business, right? So I said, all right, I need to go out and hire a sales manager. And I happened to be the person that he hired. And the conversation I had with him when we decided, hey, I'm the guy and I'm going to help you do that. I said, hey, look, they're going to come to you, the sales reps. They're going to come to you on a regular basis, individually, maybe all of them at a certain point at one time. But they're going to come to you individually, and they're going to say, some variation of like, this guy's nuts. What did you do? He's crazy. You got to fire him. You got to let him go. He's ruining everything. You name it, in some way, shape, or form, that's what they're going to do. You have to be very resolute in your stance that you've made a good decision. You trust me. And, all of those things need to be directed back to me so that they know that this is the path that we're taking and we're all on the same sheet of music. And Jay, what was really funny was I think it was like a month in, maybe almost 3 weeks in, he comes into my office and he goes, do you know that all of them have come to me and said the exact same? I said, yeah. And it's not done because I'm going to challenge them, right? They think that they're really good. And it's not that they're not. They just don't know that they can be so much better. They haven't been asked to do more, to be better, to challenge themselves, right? And I'm asking them to get out of their comfort zone. So, that was a really funny thing. And what was funny was, once I got their buy-in, and it took a little bit of time. Once I got their buy-in, the change in the ship that happened for all of them was really cool to see. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of is like they did the things I was asking them to do. And it wasn't the progress or the process or the programs that I put in place. It was the way that they worked those processes and those programs that turned into their success, right? And we did a really great job, and my owner did a really great job of that change management for those people, which is what gave them the opportunity to have great success. So it's one example of many that are out there of like how you do that management.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're kind of talking about that sales culture reset is what got us here won't get us there. And, we've talked about this a lot, sales and marketing. It's get us more leads, and it's sell more of the leads we get you. Mm-hmm. Right. And so sometimes when you notice that one aspect of your business is firing on all cylinders and it points to a hole in another aspect of the business, then you have to go in and make major changes. And that brings up a couple of different, the people side of it, the processes, and we've covered a lot of that stuff. Yeah. The scaling demands, I can talk about a story internally at Powerful Media. When we started, we managed just Facebook inboxes 6 years ago. And we had a staff of introverted stay-at-home moms, and other people that worked from home on their laptop. Mm-hmm. And they had text conversations with our customers. And we noticed, I brought a guy onto my team that came from Spectrum outbound sales, very good on the phone. Yeah, I hear the siren in the background over there.
Yeah.
Hope you're safe.
I'm good.
I'm good, yeah. Yeah. And we saw the opportunity to add outbound phone calls for lead capture and appointment setting. And I introduced it to the team. I said, this is a massive win. I'm giving you guys more opportunities to provide a better service for our customers. And I had a few people that refused to talk on the phone. And I unfortunately saw them leave. I gave them every opportunity to be successful, but it just was what it was. And the growth of the organization was recognized and necessary. Like you touched on before, if you choose to stay static, your costs don't stay static. And so you have to find a solution to accommodate that. And my introduction of outbound calls to my team was to address that issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I have to add services to Powerful Media if I'm going to continue to pay you guys well.
Right.
And it ran pretty well, but not without a cost.
Yeah, there are, change is not without pain, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too, I think that will hold people back from this change is, we have to have it perfect before we make the change. We have to have the plan perfectly together before we, try to make that change. And I think that the reality of it is that you do have to figure out a little bit of it as you're doing it, because you can't 100% know where your weak spots are until you kind of expose yourself. You mentioned the training that we were doing, or I was doing up here with the team at DeStefano this week. And I was asking them to do some things that they've never really done before. They are a very successful sales organization. They do a really great job. They close at a very high rate. And I started off the whole meeting by complimenting them on that, and then telling them that I'm going to ask them to do some things and try some things that are outside of what they normally do. You need to be very comfortable being uncomfortable. We've joked about that before, but the only way to get good at this is to understand that, one, you're going to fail at it pretty quickly. And in order to get better at it, you need to fail at it now, and you need to fail at it like often, right? So we see people, stunt their progress by never starting their progress continually. You and I talk to owners or leaders who refuse to take that first step because of the fear of failure. I know you have kids and I have a son, and like that's the number one thing I'm trying to teach him is like run to the failure, because that's also on the other side of that is where the opportunity for success is. It's a great learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah, we've covered sales culture. The question was, why does major change happen? And we touched on sales, the need to grow sales, scaling demands, the need to keep up. And one of the other issues that we've touched on in previous episodes is just market pressures. And, I'm talking to quite a few customers I have over the last 3 years about, hey, I can't just sell one product anymore. And what do I do? It's like, man, that is a great question. What do you do?
Wow.
And so we look at competition. We've talked about that. New technologies, polyurea has been the new technology for a decade or more. So it's not necessarily the new technology anymore. So we're going to see other products coming to market. I know Pentec is working on some other products as well to help out the network. Mm-hmm. And then just economic shifts. The amount of customers that I've talked to where they feel the uncertainty in the economy, whether it's just localized to where they live or it's more of a national thing. And so these things are real. And there's, like you said, the failure, run towards it. When you see something happening that you are uncertain about, I'm uncertain about market, I'm uncertain about competition, I'm uncertain about the technology, jump in and explore it. And like you said, also, I love the comment about don't reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. Go find somebody. I know within our network, we've had dealers communicate with each other. In fact, actually, Mark at DeStefano, I connected him to Aaron over at Innovative in Michigan, and they're both doing the garage organization stuff. Yeah. What a great add-on to a great product. Say, hey, we're going to come in and do your floor. We can also help with this. But that produces major changes within the organization. Yeah. Somebody that maybe can sell a floor might not sell garage organization, and so that's another problem to solve. Josh Abramson over at Albright, I love his email signature. It says Chief Solutionist.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a reframe of I solve problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really like that. So maybe, Matt, can you speak a little bit to maybe what do some of these major changes look like in real practical sense? Let's start with sales first. Some of the organizations that you've been a part of or that you've entered into for training, can you speak to some of the hey, I'm about to rock your guys' world. What are some of these things that you've done in sales?
Yeah. So, you know, when you're going from maybe that like smaller family owned mom and pop kind of shop, right? You have sales professionals or sales reps that are working for you that are much more like independent. They are kind of their own entity. And as you grow and scale, and you're going to go from maybe 2 reps to I need 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 salespeople. You have to become a little bit more structured, a little bit more rigid with your process, and that is something that is difficult as an owner to maybe put together and be agreeable for you, because you had this personal relationship with the individual that was there, and well, I can trust that person. They know what they're doing, right? And it's difficult for that individual as well too. This was a challenge that I went through with my previous role. The conversations that the reps would have with me was like, well, we could have different scenarios for different people, right? Like a senior rep could have different rules. The reality of it is on a scale, I can't manage this different process and that different process, and that rep A has this and rep B it's not feasible to track it differently and manage it differently. It just doesn't work, right? So I've had people that go, I don't like working at corporate places because it's too rigid and it's too structured. I get that and I understand that. However, there's a reason for that rigidness and the reason for that structure, because if you just kind of open the gate, right, the cows are going to roam everywhere and it's chaos, right? So putting that stuff in place has to be there. So you have to start simple, and you have to look at, okay, what makes the most sense for the average, for the good of the community here, and what's going to give us the best chance of success for all of us, and give everybody the room for a little bit of creativity in this world, but also not get us in a big mess that is unmanageable. And if I'm gonna put one person in charge of this department, what gives them the best chance of success of managing and overseeing a group of people, right? And that they can hold accountable to a process. So as we were going through this, it was a challenge. We had our better performing reps that were on that team originally that went through this journey with us. And as we grew, we had to add, more and more layers of structure to our process. And there was a tipping point for some of them. And when we got to that spot, the conversations became more and more difficult for those individuals. And at a certain point, they realized that there was no give that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And there were some of them that, hey, this doesn't work. Now, here's the interesting thing. My owner at one point, we're sitting in a room, and what was one of our best reps comes in and turns in his notice. Mm-hmm. And this was a guy that produced quite a few dollars of business for us, and good guy, nothing wrong with the individual, good producer, good rep, hey, I've decided I'm going to move on. And I could feel the energy from my owner on the other side of the table. There's a little bit of panic. And I stood up and I said, hey, I respect your decision, and I really appreciate everything you've done for me and for the company and the transitions we've gone through. And I appreciate what you're going to do for you and your family. I wish you the best of luck. The door is always open here for you if you want to come back. Right. Yeah. And handshake and a hug, and, saw him out the door kind of thing. And, he left, and the owner came and looked at me and was like, what are we going to do? I was like, we built a really good system and a really good process. We have the coverage, and we're going to hire people that will fit into the system and the process, and we'll make up for it. And we didn't miss a beat, right? Yeah. So you have to be resolute in that, that you're building the right thing. And I get that it's not for everybody. They're not going to like the change. But if we were to cave, then it's going to go way backwards, way faster, So forgive me, going on a little bit of a tangent there on that story, but you have to be very prepared for that. That's going to happen in those scenarios. I think last week we were talking with Bill, and he was talking about like the growth stages you're going to go through. The business might outgrow some of the people that you have. And that's not because they can't perform at that level, but it might just be that they don't agree with the things that the company now has to do, right?
Yep.
But at the core of it, it's for the people, right? We're doing this because I need this to be a sustainable environment for the people that are working here.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to speak a little bit more to that on the processes side of it, we introduce systems and processes and software and those things so that we can scale. Yeah, and one of the conversations we have with a lot of our dealers is, how do you track your numbers? Well, I use a Google Calendar. There are no numbers to track on that Google Calendar. Well, I mean, it tells me that I have appointments. It's like, okay, how many did you sell? What percentage? How many appointments did you have last week? And so some of these other, growth things, what it looks like in practice is go out and find a good CRM. Go out and find a good reporting tool that you like. We've talked about Engage and Builder Prime, and at Powerful Media, we've worked with about 20 different CRMs. And it's important to pay attention to those things too. And because we're kind of talking here a little bit about in practice, when we change a workflow, when we change a piece of software, I think the key factor here is lots of communication.
Oh yeah.
When we introduced the phones to my team here, I prepped them 3 months ahead of time. It's, hey, this is coming. Hey, this is coming. And then I started training them on it. Hey, I'm going to introduce you to the software that we are spending money on. Hey, I'm going to introduce you to your login and how you do it. And then I started with 2 of my more veteran or seasoned employees. And I said, I'm going to let them step into this first and learn it, and then they're going to be able to help you guys. And it went surprisingly smooth. We started in October, and January 1st, we rolled it out. Everybody, you're on board. This is the new thing. And we had a few people that, man, they came to us terrified about the change. And then once they got introduced to it slowly, it's their favorite part of the business.
Right.
In appointment setting, you talk to anybody that's a customer service rep, it's like, man, if I can get them on the phone, I said it. Exactly. Let's get them on the phone.
Right.
So, yeah, it's being curious about the systems that are out there and being willing to look and being willing to change your mind. Book a lot of demos. If you guys are looking for software for any aspect of your business, book a lot of demos. I know the Pentech Network has quite a few business partners where they kind of say, hey, this is one we know that's beneficial to your industry. Reach out to them. But it is that, that's part of that major organizational change is the owner or the general manager, the person that's the change agent in the organization. Their job is to go find better ways to do business.
100%. Yeah, you touch on a really good point, right? So nobody likes change, right? That's kind of something that everybody talks about. It doesn't matter if you're a sales rep or a marketer or anybody just that's a general, office worker, that's somebody that's in the office helping out, with paperwork or payroll or anything along those lines, right? It's funny. I used to joke that our accountant is probably the one that hates change the most, right? Because they got a spreadsheet. That's how it works, right? Don't mess with her spreadsheet. But it's not the change that they hate. It's the fear that they don't understand how it's going to work and that they won't know how it's going to work, and that they'll get it wrong or make a mistake or something along those lines, right? So it's more that they have a fear of it, right? And that change management is so critical. And that's honestly, I think that's probably not articulated when somebody says he was or she was a great leader. That's probably what is at the foundation of what made them great, is that they articulated change and prepared people for change better than anybody else. I was probably almost too methodical at times, the same way it sounds like you are about a change that's coming. It was like 6 months in advance. Okay, it's coming. Be prepared, those kinds of things. And, to the point where, I almost didn't have sympathy when you were like, well, we weren't ready for this. Like, how could you not been ready? Like, I almost dragged my feet too long on the change.
Yeah.
For the reasons that, I was worried you were going to be scared of it, kind of thing. But, when a big change is coming in an organization, Jay, and I think if you're, there's system changes, there's process changes, and then sometimes there's like leadership change type stuff too. What do you think is the best way to communicate that? Do you feel like it's better to do it individually as a whole? I guess maybe it's different depending on the change too, but do you find there's a better avenue of communication?
Yeah, I think that this is a place where the change agent, whatever role you're in, actually gets to personalize it. Mm-hmm. I think you can do a company-wide email. It's like, nobody opens those, no. Right? So you can do a company-wide email once a month or once a week saying, hey, this is coming down the road. But I think it's an opportunity to recognize each of your people and say, oh, this one is, this team member is going to actually need a little bit of extra time. I'm going to schedule time to sit alongside them, look at the screen with them, and talk about the process. I have other staff here that I'm just like, hey, this thing's happening, and they go, cool, I'll look into it myself. And I've got staff that have their own spreadsheets and track their own numbers. I have other staff that could not tell me what they had for breakfast. And so I think that that's part of the fun things about this. The other thing I will say is it is really important to make sure that you do have your mission, vision, values dialed in. And then you're able to point to those when you're explaining the change that is happening. Because, one of my favorite authors out there is Seth Godin. And I'll probably say this many more times now, but he says, people like us do things like this. And he has how to lead boiled into one phrase. People like us do things like this. And so when you look at mission, vision, values, one of ours at Powerful is we're always curious about people and marketing. That's a value of ours. Curiosity is a value. And so when I go to my team, I'm like, hey, people like us, Powerful Media, we are curious about people and marketing. And so then when I come to them and I say, hey, I have this great idea to, change our workflow.
Right.
I saw a TikTok video and I'm like super pumped about it. And I'm going to come in and ruffle feathers. I can easily say, oh, just remember, people like us do things like this. Mm-hmm. And I've got team members now where they'll just kind of look at me and roll their eyes, but they go with it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, no, I know this is who we are. So yeah, let's go.
Yeah, you made a comment about the emails. I'll give you kind of a funny thing and try it with the team. I got tired of guys not reading my emails, so I started putting like a hidden message in them. I would say like, hey, respond with the word hippo, so I know you read this email. Yeah, and I would get like 5 emails back with like, that's hysterical, hippo, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would go to the next meeting and I would say like, all right, so who read my email? And, guys would be like, oh, well, I did. I'd be like, no, you didn't. Like, yeah, I did. And the 5 people that responded would be like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I'd be like, you know how I know you didn't? And I'm like, tell them. They'd be like, hippo. Yeah. I found it. Hippo. They're like, oh, shit, he put an email in. He put a link in. I'm like, yeah, exactly, right? Or it would be like when you come in the room, do a little dance or something like that. So I know you read my email, and guys would be like, oh, boom, it was, it was always funny, and people thought it was the funniest thing. Like, it's cool. Yeah. So, I like the people like us, man. That's a really cool saying. I think that's it's a good one for sure. I think the communication part of it is huge, and knowing what type of change and who it is that's being communicated to is really vital. The process change needs to be, I think, really well documented. One of the things that we've seen a couple of times, I know in the with the dealers we're working with, working side by side alongside them, showing them how to do it is great. having it mapped out is really important as well too. I talk about binders or playbooks on a regular basis. If you're not building those things, manuals for your people that they can go and reference when you're not around, you're falling short for them. The reality of it is, even as comfortable as I think we can make people and as open a door policies you might have, people don't generally like to admit that they didn't get what you were telling them or they didn't understand it. You create this safe environment for them by having a resource that doesn't have to force them to admit in a group of people that they weren't smart enough to get the thing or didn't quite grasp the concept that the whole room seemed to understand besides themselves, right? And you also admitted that you said that there's people on your team rather that go figure it out on their own. That might be the way that they prefer to learn. So you got to be able to hit all of those marks for different people. So, process change, you got to make sure you have it firmly documented. So it's a good learning tool, but on the backside of it too, it's an accountability tool. So, hey, we made this change. We provided tools and resources. Help me understand how we're not following the process anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So those are really critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And a little tip to insert in here. When you're communicating with somebody and you can tell it's not landing with them, take ownership of it and apologize for not explaining it well. Mm-hmm. We can mistakenly say, what don't you get about this? It's so obvious. Instead, when they look at you and go, I'm not tracking with you, say, hey, I'm really sorry that I haven't explained this well. Let me try again, if that's all right. Yeah. And you actually take the pressure off of them to be, learn the way you teach, and you take it on yourself and say, let me try another way if that's okay.
It's funny, I shared with the team here, I had it drilled into my head by a manager, and now it's all of a sudden a pet peeve of mine that, when you get done explaining something to a homeowner, that you don't say, did that make sense? Because now all I hear from this manager is you look pretty dumb. Did that make sense to you? Right? Yeah. And instead, it should be hey, did I explain that okay? Right? Because it gives them permission to go, actually, I didn't quite get what you were saying there. Mm-hmm. As opposed to being yeah, I am an idiot. I didn't get that. Can you tell me more, please? So yeah, I think you're spot on there.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I can communicate effectively. If not, roll up a newspaper and hit me over the head with it and tell me to communicate better.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Pretty important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to touch on, I kind of opened with it, but it's kind of the business growth sequence. Powerful Media has started with all different levels of businesses. We have jumped, into the marketing world with well-established businesses with multiple niches that they're already successful in, multiple verticals, and they saw, concrete coatings as an add-on. And so we've come into those. They've got 10 or 15 salespeople. They're doing a lot of work. They already have their systems in place. Some of them, I won't name names, used Salesforce as a CRM. It's a behemoth. And we get introduced to those systems. And I've also started with others that are I don't even know how to market. My buddy and I were installing epoxy floors in the 20 years ago, and I saw an opportunity, and they're like, how do I market? Mm-hmm. And so there's all these different stages, and I wanted to talk a little bit about let's just go through the stage of a business development, and our listeners can kind of take a mental note of where they are on this process. And we touched on most people start because they know how to do it, right?
No.
And you wanna just expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So I think that the really cool thing about this industry is you start because you see an opportunity in this world that I have the wherewithal to do the thing that can be done, right? Or I can talk to the customer and I have a friend that can do the thing, right? And together we can start a business. Like I could manage the business side of it and he can manage the install side of it. Justin Plant in North Dakota, right? Who was kind enough to come on the show and have us up there to work with his sales team, who had a phenomenal month last month. It was really cool to hear from him about that. And just a fun guy to talk to. But they took a chance and they did that. And, that first stage is terrifying and exciting at the same time. And there's definitely some risk because you're putting your skin in the game, but the risk is really yourself and your buddy and the little bit of capital you put up front to buy some equipment and a little bit of marketing cost, but mostly hey, do you know anybody else that would want this done? Do you mind giving us your friend's name and phone number and that kind of thing, right? At a certain point, you start to say, okay, there's not enough hours to keep like the day job and do this on the side. And then you have to make a decision, right? Okay, is this a thing that puts a couple extra bucks in my pocket, or are we making this a real business, right? So I think that's that first kind of leap of faith you have to make. Am I making a real go at this? So that requires you then to, I think, make a decision to maybe hire another person or two, right? Mm-hmm. Which is scary because now other people are reliant on you to make this work, right? And now all of a sudden you have to do what you just said, which I got to figure out how to generate other opportunities other than somebody telling their friend, family member, neighbor about us, right? So you have to figure out a little bit of like the mailers or the door hangers, and that's usually where it starts. It's a little bit more of like grassroots kind of marketing, where I'm going to pay my nephew to go hang things on doors, and we'll get a call or two that way, right? Or when we're doing an install, we'll go hang stuff up. So you're kind of hustling, and you're doing a lot of stuff on your own. And basically, I think that first kind of 1.5 to 2 stages that we're talking about right here is that word of mouth, and you're building a good neighborhood reputation for yourself. Yep. And it's funny to think about the company that I was working at before this. They did that for 50 years, right? Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, what they were able to build and do that for 50 years, like that doesn't happen very often in our industry. And that's what inspired me to go sign up with that. But then you have to make a decision, right? Okay, we got 10, 15, 20 people that now are working for us because we got enough business to like support it and go get some slightly bigger jobs that take longer time. And I need them there and doing some of the repairs and the other things that happen. So you're still a contractor, though, at that point, right? And that's what you got into business to do, is I'm a contractor, does home remodeling, home repairs, those kinds of things. Well, then you go through the stage where you say, okay, am I going to grow this and take the next step to become the sales and marketing organization that happens to also do contracting work, right? Mm-hmm. That's a big step. And it's much different than what you were doing before. And you now have to really think about numbers and planning and data and all of these other things that weren't part of the, like, hey, I shake a customer's hand and I do good work, and that's why I get the referral and, the other things that go along with it. I have to hold salespeople accountable. We have to know how to do role playing, and I have to understand capacity, and I have to understand all of the different acronyms, the different letters and numbers and all the things that you guys throw out on the marketing side that I don't understand, Jay. Like when you guys start talking in that different language, you guys start talking and I glaze over, right? So you make that decision to become a very strong sales and marketing organization. And I think that usually happens around that like $3 to $4 million mark, where you have to make that decision to take that next step, right? And I think that next stage that you go through, and I think Bill in our last episode kind of alluded to that, is, okay, that's only sustainable for a period of time, probably up until about that like $15, $20 million mark. And then all of a sudden you have to make a really big shift, because that becomes something that can burn people out if you just stay at that level. And you have to, as a senior leadership team, make a decision to become a training organization. Because if you don't, and you don't start developing really great levels of leadership around you, it's only ever one person at the top that's responsible for all of those people, right? So we went from 20 people when I first started to about 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
One person being responsible for talking to all, it's just that it doesn't work, right? You need sales managers, you need assistant sales managers, you need production managers and assistant production managers, crew leads, all of these different people that have to be responsible for their tiny world, but they've never led people before. And there's no manual for leading people and being a manager. So you have to be really good at training them, and they need to be really good at training the person that's going to replace them. So your whole organization shift has to be, how do you train these people to do their job really well and train the next person really well? And that's the evolution of the business as I see it, right? And you just have to be very aware of like where you are, what the next step is that's coming. And like I said, there's people that have been there before and done it before. Reach out to them, talk to them. And that's the cool thing about this business is that people want to share that stuff with you. So sorry, I'm probably ranting and not necessarily directly answering your question, but I don't know if that does.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's something that we love to talk about. We love to get on the phone and talk to our customers. And, you know, it's fun to listen to the contractors talk about, man, I can't wait until I can hire a salesperson. Or I can't wait till I can get out of the house and be building the business. Mm-hmm. And so it's, you know, I think that this episode is a really great episode for owners and managers to be paying attention to. What is the next step for me to grow this business? And we're already at 45 minutes. And so I think that we'll kind of wrap it up and maybe just kind of talk about a little bit of recap. You know, the first one that I think is most important is clear communication. Mm-hmm. When you guys recognize that change is coming, over communicate. I think that we don't realize that over communication is actually probably the right amount of communication. Mm-hmm. If I said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
What's another major, you know, tip that we've touched on to successfully navigate change?
You know, we were just almost kind of touching on it there too, you know, talking about hiring, right? That sales manager kind of thing, or the next leader. I think far too often we hear the comment of like, well, I can't wait till I can afford to do it. And people put it off. You need to do it sooner than you think at times. And there's a way to afford it. And you and I have had this conversation with people before. You can't afford not to do it. Like if you won't grow until you hire that person, right? So, again, we can show you ways to do that if you need help with it, but that's the thing that holds people back. Like hire the person that will help you grow. That's the reason to hire them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Yep. And then another one that we kind of touched on was measure and adjust.
Yeah. Everything's
Find
measured.
A system. Yep. Yeah. What you measure improves. Like just quote thought leaders out there. But yeah, find a way to measure it and find a way to understand your numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Become a math nerd. I mean, I'm telling you, if my teenage self could see me now, he'd be like, who are you? You know, kind of thing. It's hysterical how much I get into numbers now. I would have never in a million years bet on it, but it's so important, and it's amazing how fascinating it can be.
Yep. Yeah. Numbers are, it's the way you scale. It's why when you hear major organizations making sweeping changes, they have people way at the top that looked at the numbers. Mm-hmm. And you as the owner or the manager should have access to those numbers and know what they mean and know how to make changes based on those. Yeah, 100%. That's good. Yeah. Any last words or thoughts on this?
You know, I think change and growth is painful. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, right? I think, in fact, it probably almost means you're doing it right. And one day you'll wake up and your head will be above water. and then a month or two later, you'll wake up and it'll be back below water because you're going through your next stage. So, again, was with DeStefano, this week, and what a blast it was hanging out with that team and working with them. And they're trying to get better and grow, and they're already at the top of their game where they're at. And if that's not proof enough that you can always continually get better and grow, for those that are out there that might be, trying to catch up with them, that should be encouraging for you too. So it's cool stuff, and be happy to help for anybody that wants to, reach out.
Yep. Yeah, and we're not much for bragging about ourselves, but we would appreciate if anybody that's out there listening would like and follow and share and throw comments into these shows and ask questions, and we'd love to continue this conversation for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's a wrap, Matt.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, sir.
Yeah.